Good morning, YouTubers. This is going to be one of my show and tell videos. What we're looking at is my YouTube channel here as of January 31st, 2019. I have a bunch of playlists. Let's just take a look at that. I concentrate on a couple of things. I concentrate on the Bucky stuff, as I call it, which tends to mean synergetic geometry. It's a philosophy, though, and it's in the humanities, I would say. So you'll dig down inside, like American literature, and boom, treasure chest. Open it, rhombic dodecahedron. Whoa! Not a new discovery by Fuller by any means. This was a fascination to Kepler way, way back, right? It's not a platonic. What's cool about it, though, is it fills space without gaps. Now, what do I mean when I say not a platonic? There's only 5 polyhedra that qualify as platonic. And one of the criteria for being a platonic is all your vertices have to be surrounded by the same angles as every other. Whereas in this one, you can see there's sort of shallow, wide angles. If you had a pair of scissors, they'd be kind of wide open on this angle, and then there's sharper angles. So even though all the faces are the same, diamonds, rhombus, rhomb, lozenge, lots of words people use, but even though the diamond faces are all identical to each other, and there are 12 of them, one left open here because I'm going to pour something in there. Not in this demo, though. I'm going to just talk about doing that. If you saw my Makerspace video recently, I was doing phi-scaled S modules. That's all part of this same, what we call concentric hierarchy, which is sort of the Sesame Street of synergetic geometry in American literature. And here, like the cube, if I make it correctly, where the face diagonal of the cube here has to be the same as the face diagonal of the diamonds. So I can hold them up. Let's see if I can hold them up in an intelligible manner. The face diagonal of the cube, so there, that looks good. So if you're stacking these on top of each other, if you're showing your class, if you're a teacher of geometry or literature, and you want to make like synergetics intelligible, I don't think people are going to want to read the whole thing necessarily, but just a passage here and there so you understand your history, where intellectual history, college could be just as relevant as elementary school in terms of just introducing the basic shapes. I think needs to happen in elementary school. I was in a middle school yesterday. We were talking about adventures in Python. I showed them this book because I'm teaching. If you watch my previous videos, just prior to this in the timeline, I'm going on about codesters again and talking about, you could say STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I'm trying to bring over into STEM from the humanities, from Path, from philosophy, some philosophy, and infuse it into STEM, because I think STEM has gotten a little bit in need of some fresh blood, you could say. Speaking of Python, show and tell. Now this kind of a red baseball hat has all kinds of political overtones in my day and age now. This one's made in Canada. And this was made quite a while back, though, for a certain stuffed snake. So this was the mascot to Python conferences for a while. Steve Holden was chairman then of the Python Software Foundation. And before that, he had helped really get the whole PyCon thing going. There was EuroPython in Europe. Python starts as a computer language, as you know. It starts in Amsterdam with Guido. And so it's a Dutch invention, you could say. Shout out to Holland. However, it spreads, it comes to the United States, takes off, and we need a conference to float around North America to sort of suck up the interest and, help people convene, conference, convention, whatever. And so at that time in history, there was a lot of mascottery. There was a lot of, let's have a stuffed animal or some kind of like cute teddy bear symbol. Pearl already had the camel at that point. So with the camel already firmly entrenched in Pearldom, and with Python coming along as kind of the next big language after Perl in some ways, we needed a mascot too. So Naga, she's a she, her pronoun is she, and we had a whole idea of a cartoon, comic books, Naga's adventures. They're a little funny, off color maybe. We never went there. Not production. Another show and tell item. Back to the Bucky stuff a little more. I'm going to cover my face here with this because it's my face. So this is me in about 30 years ago. So about half my current age. In my 30s, maybe this was like 30, 29, somewhere in there. It's 85, isn't it? 80, I think maybe in 84. I do have the actual article. This was taken not by me, but by a professional photographer for the Oregonian named Falconer. And years later, I guess the Oregonian just put a bunch of its like mishmash of prints they didn't need out on the chopping block and auction world, and I just bought that back off an auction site or eBay kind of place. Maybe it was eBay itself, I don't think so, for $10. So for me, it's got value. It's, you know, a picture of back when I was the futurist. I had another article done on me in the Oregonian after this one about hypertext kiosks, because I knew hypertext was coming, HTTP and all that, and I was quite aware of how big it would be, and I wanted to be in the paper about that, and I was. So another show and tell item, and there's only a couple more, and then we'll go on the web for a sec. Okay, here I am back again. John Denver. Do y'all remember? He was like a folk singer, very, very famous in some circles. And as happens with quite a few celebs, they need, like the rest of us, to see a bright future if possible. Like, how can you sing happy, upbeat stuff if the world's going to hell, right? And Fuller was always known for kind of having a happy, upbeat view of the universe, and or at least potentially thought planet Earth could be a pretty good place, that we could really get our act together as a human species. That was his whole focus. How do we get our act together? And a lot of it had to do with artifacts. You need the right artifacts. By artifact, I mean like inventions, stuff like Flextegrity here. Now, I don't go into Flextegrity in any great detail in this video, but what I do want to notice is that the centers of all these icosahedrons here are at the centers of closest packed spheres if we were doing what's called a face-centered cubic lattice, or as Fuller calls it, an isotropic vector matrix. In Zoom Tool, I'm going to disappear again. In Zoom, you can somewhat do a vector equilibrium 12 around 1, but actually the reds and the blues, I think, are slightly different lengths. So this may be cheating a little bit. I think that the blues, let's go on the web now. I think that the blues come from the radii of a regular icosahedron, whereas they all need to be the same length, and the radii of a regular icosahedron are not the same as the blue edges. And let's go to the web and look for a picture that illustrates what I think. See, here it looks from this picture like we are able to do an isotropic vector matrix with Zoom Tool. Even more so with this picture, although that one stays blurry. But here, this to me is my evidence that we're not really dealing with the same lengths, because I know with an icosahedron that these edges are going to be a little bit longer than the reds to the center, just a little. So something like this, an isotropic vector matrix, is not actually what we're seeing here, maybe. I'll double check with my friend Dave Koski, who's much more of a Zoom Tool expert. By the way, if you run out of budget for for Zoom and you just want to like build stuff with a virtual Zoom, in other words, you just want to be able to do it on the computer, I highly recommend the VZome software. Install this and, like David, become an expert in this, and you can make all kinds of cool stuff. I see there are a lot of videos available for using VZome. So let's see. I bet David's are in here too somewhere. Anyway, that's all for another video. I think we're good here, and I look forward to picking up where I left off on this one. Really, I'm kind of talking to teachers here. You want to jazz up your curriculum with some relevant, interesting Western civilization and Eastern civilization as a combination. You want a synergy of planetary civilization to talk about, and you're not sure where to turn. Well, I'm saying look up the Bucky stuff for some good ideas. Let's look especially at the Dymaxion, just the word Dymaxion, and see what that pulls up in images. The car, don't forget about the car. See, I was never super into this car, but Jay Baldwin was, because he was into cars in general. Cars, I was more into trains as a kid, so when I got to the Fuller stuff, it wasn't the car that really flipped me out, but now when I look at it, it's like, wow, that's really cool. And Norman Foster recently rebuilt the car from scratch, beautiful version there, drives great. Wall Street Journal goes in a test drive on an old crummy one and finds it kind of hazardous, but that's an old one too, right? And these were prototypes, and it was supposed to be the fuselage of an airplane, and that we were going to take off. You could fly with this thing. The wings would come out or whatever. In other words, it was designed to both fly and go on the road. And in 2019, we're still working on those prototypes. You can find them everywhere, but none of them are in commercial release. So we still are behind Bucky in a way with his thinking. And this map, there are other algorithms that will reduce distortion to the same level, basically. What's trademark about this map, what's the hallmark about this map, is how it doesn't slice into the continents in any way. They've found a way to do this layout where you can see the whole landmass, pretty much all of it, as one contiguous landmass. You can cross. There's actually a gap there, so-called bridge to nowhere, where we want the electrical tie-up, the high voltage there, to help this northern area with around the Arctic. That's its own kind of region, and it's going to have its own economy. Ships are going through here already. I'm talking about global warming a little bit. The maps that you see, this map, is color-coded with temperature, and of course the green means cold, but it's whether or not it gets super warm up there, we're going to want that electrical intertie so that when it's dark and low demand over here, we can shunt more of the energy to the other side and back and forth. That was considered a high priority of World Game. Now, if you don't know about World Game or global electrical grids, by the way, here's kind of a rough sketch of the electrical grid. It's like, if you know about humans, you know about the circulation system. If you're studying planet Earth, you've got to study its global systems, and a lot of times we avoid doing that because why? We don't have a history. We have democracy in the sense of, well, what we don't have is democracy in the sense of teaching in a big picture way. That was reserved for admiralty, for royals. The sort of big picture view is too dangerous to be shared with every man. That was the old philosophy. And Fuller was kind of like breaking that wall between the inner circle and the outer circle and trying to get the outer circle more aware. And he had mixed success because, I noticed that researchers today, they dig down and they get to like Mockingbird and so on, like the CIA thing, but they don't make the link to Applewhite, who was part of that, and then they don't link from Applewhite to Synergetics, where he was collaborator and worked closely with Fuller, one of Fuller's earliest fans, in fact. So I take that as a test of how good, like all these, QAnon and stuff, They don't dig down far enough, as far as I'm concerned, because they don't find the stuff, which is at the bottom of a lot of where they're digging. I could even claim I worked for Q, but that would just be a joke because Center for Urban Education, CUE, we pronounce that Q, so, but I'm not Q. All right, so anyway, enough interesting video for now. I'll be back, of course, and we'll see you then.